10 spine-chilling encounters with cursed feral people in Appalachia, terrifying secrets revealed. The cold wind howled through the trees like a warning cry, rattling the bones of the forgotten Appalachian town of Black Hollow. Shadows danced in the corners of every street and house, and murmurs of cursed feral people echoed among the weathered walls. Residents spoke in hushed tones, relaying chilling tales of eerie encounters, missing pets, and something lurking just beyond sight in the darkened woods. "You can hear their growls at night," they said, "and they carry with them the weight of their ancestors' sins." Sarah, a determined mother, shook her head at the folklore, but even she felt the chill creep down her spine as she pulled her battered minivan into the deserted grocery store lot. She could hear the whispers rise like smoke, a mixture of dread and excitement filling the air. "More pets gone missing," someone said. "Lily said she saw shadows, too," replied another, with eyes wide in fear. Shivers raced through her. The town she wanted to rely on felt more like a trap, laden with fear. Her son Jake had always been curious, eyes sparkling with mischief. But lately, each laugh felt more like the last gasp before a storm as he claimed to see shadowy figures flitting through their yard. "It's Max, Mom. He knows something's wrong," he insisted after their dog had started acting strangely, barking at nothing in the night. It was unsettling. Was he right? Were these tales of feral people true? Things grew darker. Nights turned colder, and unusual sounds crept into Sarah's home, rustlings in the bushes, low growls that sent shivers racing through her body. She wanted to think it was the wind, but there was a suffocating heaviness that settled in her chest, choking out any rational thought. Just as she decided to reach out to the local authorities, her heart fluttered, remembering the rumors surrounding the police corruption and neglect, like the town itself, deep-rooted in despair. She couldn't trust them. Then it happened. A clear, visceral terror hit when Jake didn't return home one night after wandering into the woods. He's just playing, Sarah thought, fighting panic as she waited. But when laughter turned to silence, despair sunk in like a stone. Alone with Lily, the house felt hollow. Every tick of the clock grew louder, punctuating their worst fears. Western ghosts of an impoverished town murmured outside, reminding her of danger close at hand. With determination bubbling beneath sure fear, she slipped on her coat and grabbed the flashlight. The forest loomed ahead, dark and menacing, shadows waiting to wrap around her like an embrace. "Jake!" She screamed into the nothingness, losing herself in the labyrinth of trees that seemed to be pulling her in. Panic twisted inside her stomach, a cold numbness beginning to spread as the air thickened. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The shadows closed in around her as she stepped deeper, the smell of wet earth and something else, something rotten, suffocating her. The whispers rose, curling around her ears like a soft warning, chilling her to the bone. It was then, in the stillness, that she heard a bone-piercing scream that shattered the night. The sound clawed into her heart, stilling her breath, and terror swept through her like a thunderstorm. Was it Jake? Was it the feral people claiming another soul? With dread pooling in her gut, she stumbled forward, realizing the truth she had pushed aside. The stories weren't mere tales, they had teeth and hunger. And that scream she knew. It wasn't just a sound, it was a warning of the curse that bound them all to Black Hollow, a harrowing truth she had no choice but to face. As she forged ahead, a creeping dread settled in her bones. Would she find her son? Or would he be yet another whisper lost to the cursed forest? Time warped as she gasped desperately for breath, teetering on the edge of darkness, and she could feel the shadows reaching closer. The flashlight flickered, its weak beam illuminating twisted branches and moonlit undergrowth. Each step Sarah took felt heavier, like the forest itself was eager to consume her. The cold air seared her lungs as she called out for Jake once more, her voice echoing back, swallowed by the trees. Every rustle, every creak of branches above felt like a warning. "Jake!" She screamed, desperation tightening her throat. Nothing. Just the sound of her own panicked breaths, weaving through the night, wrapping her in a cocoon of dread. The darkness was thick, almost alive, and as she ventured deeper, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She turned the flashlight, scanning her surroundings frantically. Branches scratched against her skin as if trying to pull her back, but she pressed on. She had to find Jake. Suddenly, a low growl broke the silence, rumbling from somewhere nearby. It was a deep, guttural sound, twisted and primal. Her skin prickled. The tales of feral people surfaced in her mind, and fear sank its claws deeper into her heart. With the beam of her flashlight trembling in her grip, she stumbled forward, urgency propelling her. Then, ahead, she spotted something by a weathered tree stump. A flash of movement. Something small darted through the brush and she gasped as the truth hit her. It was Max. She yelled, relief flooding her. But the dog froze, eyes wide and fixed on a point beyond her. His fur stood on end, a deep growl rumbling in his chest. Sarah felt every hair stand on her body. There was something behind her. "Jake!" she shouted, spinning around. The beam swung wildly, revealing nothing but the oppressive blackness, but the growl grew louder, closer. The shadows pulsed, writhed, and then she saw them, figures shrouded in darkness, their forms twisted and unnaturally contorted. They emerged slowly, moving like phantoms, stepping into the limited light, the flesh of their faces dirt-ridden and raw. Hollow eyes, void of any humanity, locked onto hers, and she felt a chill grip her heart, a primal fear that sent her legs scrambling to run. Run! Instinct screamed at her, and she turned, adrenaline surging. But Max stood firm, barking madly, his loyalty unyielding even as the figures advanced. "Max, come on. We need to go." The pressure of their sinister presence weighed down on her, a shroud of terror tightening. The figures moved silently, gliding through the underbrush, their growls mingling into an unsettling chorus that sent her deeper into panic. Jake's scream echoed in her mind again. She had to find him, but the shadows were thickening, closing in, racing back towards the path. She felt them closing in. The dense darkness seemed to reach for her, clawing at her clothes as she plunged ahead. Would Jake's voice reach her, cut through the veil of horror? She needed to believe. She had to. A flash of white up ahead, she cut toward it, desperate for any spark of hope. It was a clearing. She burst from the forest's grasp and into the moonlight, her heart racing, eyes wide. But as she stepped into the brightness, she stood frozen, staring at what lay before her, the outline of a child sitting on a rock. Jake. There it was again, that chilling howl behind her, the feral figures now silhouetted at the edge of the trees, their hollow eyes fixated upon her. But Jake didn't move, only stared ahead, his gaze blank, almost empty. Fear surged within her. "Jake! Please!" But he didn't react. As she took a step towards him, the darkness roared, a cacophony swelling with hunger. Could she cross that bridge? What if Jake was no longer her son? Just as despair washed over her, a dark figure lunged past the tree line. Her heart raced as realization hit. Now the ultimate choice arose. Would she save her son, or would she face the cursed fates they all had come to fear? The night pulsed around her, waiting, and she had to decide. Sarah's thoughts raced, a whirlwind of panic and dread. The figures behind her were closing in, their growls weaving through the air like sinister whispers. She couldn't think straight, her instincts screaming at her to flee. Yet her son sat immobile, a haunting silhouette against the moonlight. "Jake!" she yelled again, her voice trembling. "Please! Look at me!" He didn't respond, just stared ahead, his expression vacant. She felt the weight of the darkness behind her, pressing down like a suffocating shroud. The figures were almost upon her, their grotesque forms shifting in the shadows as they moved with unnatural speed. A glimmer of sanity broke through the chaos. She wasn't just facing a choice, she was grappling with the very essence of her child. If Jake had truly been taken, what was left in his place? "Don't do this, please," she pleaded, desperation cracking her voice. The air thickened with an unsettling tension. The growls grew louder, vibrating through her bones. She took another step toward Jake, the ground beneath her felt alive, pulsing with something dark and hungry. Suddenly, Max barked fiercely, lunging forward, breaking the spell. He dashed between Sarah and the encroaching figures, teeth bared. The strange forms halted, hesitating as Max's fierce spirit disrupted their advance. "Good boy. Max, stay." She gripped the flashlight tighter, its beam flickering feebly against the looming threats. The figures shifted, their movements more deliberate now, as if calculating how to overpower her. A figure stepped forward, its face shadowed but the outline grotesquely familiar. Could it be Jake? "Jake!" She screamed, and the figure flinched, its head tilting as if it understood. But there was an uncanny look, a terrible wrongness about it that froze her insides. "Mommy," the word came out like a rasp, igniting a glimmer of hope that crashed into despair. "Is that you?" she asked, heart pounding. She took a cautious step closer despite the instinct to retreat, the pull of maternal love battling against the primal fear coursing through her. It moved closer, but it wasn't he, her son. As the moonlight broke over its face, she saw the dilapidated features, a horror show of decay etched with a sickening grin. Hollow eyes like sunken pits stared back. With a shriek, she recoiled, terror flooding through her veins. Jake's laughter echoed through the clearing, warped and twisted. "Help me, Mommy." Her heart broke and her legs instinctively backed away. The figures surged forward again, their growls rising to a fever pitch, a choir of evil intent. "Run!" she screamed instinctively, retreating. Max barked, her loyal protector, but fear coursed through her, pushing her toward Jake, the real Jake, wherever he was. "Max! Come! Come!" She turned, frantic, needing to get back to the shadows of the forest, hoping to find a trail or a path where they might hide. But then she heard it, a soft whisper in the darkness, chilling her to the bone. "Join us." The word seeped into her consciousness, overtaking her thoughts, making her question if she should run toward the cursed figures or deeper into the protective cover of the woods. "No," she whispered to herself. "I won't abandon you, Jake." Each step felt monumental, every pulse pounding in her head. The woodland came alive with sinister laughter, but she pressed on, determined to summon the strength to save him. Then, out in the distance, through the thick veil of trees, she spotted a flicker of movement, lights. Laughter. Voices. She had to know, her heart racing and the shadows pursuing her. She took a deep breath and pushed toward that glimmering hope. Could it be salvation? Or another trap waiting to ensnare her? In the chaotic swirl of the night, she could only ponder, would she find her son, or would she fall deeper into the nightmare she had stumbled upon? The laughter grew louder, taunting her as she plunged deeper into the tree-line. Each step felt as if she were wading through a thick fog of dread. The flickering lights danced further away, a cruel mirage that promised escape but felt increasingly out of reach. Why was she chasing an illusion? "Jake!" she yelled again, her voice cracking against the weight of the night. But the only response came from the shadows, growls echoing with an eerie harmony. The figures were close now, their breath hot against her back, as if they were tasting her fear. She could hear them shifting, circling like vultures, savoring the moment before the kill. "Max!" she called, but the dog had fallen silent, an ominous absence where she once felt comfort. Panic seized her throat as she whipped around, hoping to catch a glimpse of her protector, praying he was still by her side. The trees loomed like skeletal fingers reaching for her, and the moonlight flickered through branches, casting ghostly patterns on the ground. Shadows moved in the periphery, distorting reality, making it impossible to know which way to turn. She was lost in a haunted maze, each path twisting back on itself, with the only certainty being the impending threat behind her. And still, the laughter persisted high-pitched and mocking. It morphed into whispers, creeping through the underbrush like liquid darkness. Join us, it was a beckoning that sent shivers down her spine, pulling at the edges of her resolve. With renewed vigor, she pressed on, willing herself not to succumb to the weight of despair. As she stumbled forward, searching for the lights that had captivated her lingering hope, she caught a glimpse of something shimmering between the trees. Was it a house? She forced her legs to move faster, the thought of shelter flooding her with a surge of adrenaline. If she could just reach it, perhaps she could find help, something to fight against the encroaching evil. Each stride felt like running through molasses, time stretching between the beats of her heart. She could feel the darkness inching closer, its icy tendrils curling around her soul. A flash of memory swept over her, Jake laughing in the backyard, sunlight dancing on his dark curls. She couldn't lose that spark of joy, not to these monsters. Just as hope surged within her, the lights blinked out. An unsettling quiet draped the air, suffocating and complete. She paused, breath hitching, the absence of laughter now more terrifying than its presence. "Mommy," the voice sliced through the silence, tearing at her heart. It was faint, yet unmistakably Jake's. She spun, desperate. "Jake! Where are you?" Over here, it was a soft whisper, a barely audible beckoning that sent her heart racing. The call came again, insistently, but there was something darker in its tone, a sinister twist that made her question if this was the boy she'd raised. Ahead, shadows shifted, contorting in a grotesque dance. Sarah took a step forward, drawn by a force she couldn't name, just as a rustle erupted behind her. Bathed in the moonlight, figures emerged once more, grotesque and eager, grinning as they closed the distance. Fear gripped her, an icy hand wrapping around her throat. She glanced left, then right, visions of escape swirling in her mind. But the only thing she could truly hear was Jake's voice, calling her closer, promising her safety. "Join us," echoed around her. "Max!" She screamed, anguish clawing at her heart. And then she froze as a scream pierced her own lips. It wasn't her voice. It was Jake's. Was he in danger, or was this the cruel trick of the cursed figures feeding off her fear? In that chilling moment, Sarah knew she stood at a crossroads. Would she keep chasing the echo of her son or surrender to the dark tide that surged around her? Clutching the flashlight like a lifeline, she took a step toward the unforgiving shadows. Her heart thundered in her chest, drowning out the rustling leaves and the sinister laughter that ricocheted through the trees. She forced herself to push forward, the flashlight beam cutting through the darkness like a knife, illuminating grotesque faces peeking through the underbrush, eyes glinting with hunger. Each step felt like a descent into madness, the echo of Jake's scream haunting her relentlessly. "Stay calm, Sarah. Just keep moving," she whispered to herself. Even as the words lost their comfort, her mind raced, clouded with chaos. Could it truly be her son's voice? The pleading tone clawed at her throat, demanding she act. But was this trap set for her? Had these creatures twisted the very essence of her child, leaving behind only a cruel imitation? The memory of Jake's laughter returned, a sweet warmth swallowed by the icy grip of doubt. "I'm coming, buddy," she called out, though doubt gnawed at her confidence. She turned her head, searching the shadows. Yet, there was nothing but hidden shapes, staring back with malicious intent. Suddenly, a growl fractured the stillness, reverberating through the trees, followed by a frenzied rush. She barely had a moment to react before the figures were upon her, long limbs reaching, teeth bared. Sarah stumbled back, scrambling to regain her footing, but they were too fast, too close. A flash from her flashlight burned against their pallid skin, revealing twisted silhouettes. They grinned, mouths too wide and eyes too empty, absorbing her fear like sweet nectar. One lunged, claws grasping at her, and she ducked, the air rushing past her as she evaded the grasp. Jake! The name was a mantra fueling her, but doubt lingered, tainting the essence of hope. Would her pursuit end here, devoured by monsters masquerading as family? She veered left, running deeper into the abyss, heart racing as the branches snagged at her clothes, tearing fabric and flesh alike. She could hear them behind her, a cacophony of howls echoing in the night, victory resonating in their breath. They were relentless, a dark tide pulling her under. "Over here, Mommy," the whisper beckoned again, softer now, but still unmistakably Jake's. Her resolve crumbled like dry leaves as she followed the sound, eyes wide with both terror and longing. The trees momentarily parted ahead, revealing a faint glow. She froze, hope blossoming against the cold night. But as she rushed toward the light, she stumbled over roots that twisted like the limbs of the creatures pursuing her. When she regained her footing, the glow dimmed, collapsing into shadows that whispered warnings, fading memories twisted in torment. "Come back, Mommy," the voice moaned, agony lacing the words. "Jake!" she cried out, desperation clawing at her heart. The shadows lingered, shifting like smoke, and as she approached, the laugh returned, more sinister than before, a sound too familiar yet never comforting. The overwhelming desire to push forward consumed her, but the laughter morphed into a cacophony of voices, all blending into one horrifying chant that twisted her insides. Join us," with fear gripping her tightly, Sarah wrestled with her instincts. She turned, heart pounding as she prepared to flee again. But before she could move, a figure darted from the shadows, blocking her path. It was a girl her son's age, with wild hair framing a gaunt face. Eyes hollow and pleading, she raised a trembling finger, pointing behind Sarah with a warning that sent waves of dread crashing over her. "Don't look back." A primal scream erupted from her throat, cutting through the air as the shadows surged forward, the laughter drowning out her rage, her terror, her hope. In that moment, as Sarah stood frozen, she understood, the shadows were pushing her toward an unspeakable choice. Would she fight for her son no matter the cost, or would she be consumed by the void? And as they closed in, darkness swelled, beckoning her with promise and peril. "What will you choose?" whispered the girl, her voice almost swallowed by the night. A chilling thought gripped Sarah's heart as she braced herself for the decision looming ahead. The girl's breath quickened. "You have to run. Don't let them take you." With those frantic words echoing in her mind, Sarah felt her feet move, charged by instinct, not thought. She dashed past the girl, who flickered like a candlelight, slipping between the trees as if she had never been there at all. Branches lashed at her, a frenzy of sharp pain digging into her skin, but she didn't slow. A low growl rumbled in the distance, vibrating the ground beneath her, a warning of the huntress closing in. "Jake! I'm coming!" she cried, a mix of defiance and desperation. Her voice bounced against the thick trunks, swallowed by the encroaching darkness, yet she forced herself to believe he was near. Her flashlight flickered, the beam wobbling as its battery fought against despair. It cast frantic shadows that danced in response, each step a race against the growing certainty that time was running out. A flash of movement caught her eye. Something was darting through the underbrush. The beings that tormented her weren't just lurking, they were circling, drawn to her panic like moths to flame. She could almost hear their snarls in the air, sensing their glee as they hunted her. She sprinted into a clearing, the light showcasing a grotesque tableau. Remnants of torn clothing hung, fluttering sadly from branches like forgotten wishes. Blood seeped into the dirt, dry and cruel, telling tales of those who had come before, lost souls. Her breath caught in her throat as the specters leered from the shadows. The hollow eyes mocked her efforts. "Join us," whispered echoes intermingled with the night air, clamoring for recognition, for acceptance. The words tumbled like autumn leaves in a gale, inviting yet sinister. The gravity of it dragged at her heels, trying to pull her down. The last glimmer of hope ignited within her. She would not succumb. She was Jake's mother, damn it. With renewed strength, she darted to one side, narrowly avoiding a claw-like hand reaching for her. The sharp hiss of breath almost grazed her ear. But then, she felt it, the ground shifting beneath her, unsettling, a low rumble escalating to chaos. She found herself stumbling, feet slipping on something slick, greasy and warm beneath her. Her hand braced against a tree to catch herself. Looking down, her heart sank into her stomach. It was blood. Sarah. A familiar voice, a ghost from beyond. That soft plea wafted through the shadows, drifting like smoke. "Help me, Jake!" she shouted, her heart breaking. Chills climbed her spine as the anguished cry grew fainter, heralded by a raucous laughter that erupted, pouring from all sides. It was his voice, but did he truly need her? Or was it another trick, another cruel game? Sickening memories of what had happened in these woods flooded her mind. She saw images flash, families captured, children forgotten. She shook her head to stave off the encroaching despair, every muscle tensed for a fight, but the space around her shifted again. A void opened. The shadows were thickening into something tangible, drawing closer. She had to act, had to choose. Another growl pierced the air, closer now. Panic surged up her throat, choking her. Just as she turned to flee, a piercing glance from a pair of twisted eyes locked onto hers, full of hunger and malice. "Join us," they beckoned, the chant swelling. Shadows flickered, converging and pulling her toward a darkness deep enough to drown her soul. With a fierce resolve, Sarah screamed, "I want to let you take him." And she headed straight for the encroaching void, heart pounding, pulse a drum against despair. The shadows coiled around her, grasping for her, but she pressed on, an unyielding force fueled by love, by fear, and by the desperate hope that she could save her son. What if it's too late? Rattled her mind, a thought too dark to bear. Every instinct screamed to turn back and escape. But Jake's distant plea clung to her heart, urging her forward. Would she face the horrors of the shadows, or was she already too far gone? A final leap into the darkness propelled her deeper into the churning abyss. As Sarah plunged into the void, the oppressive darkness clutched her, wrapping around her like a suffocating shroud. Her heart thundered in her chest, fear pulsating through her veins. And then, it happened. The sensation of falling stopped, but the shadows pressed close, thickening in the unseen space around her. "Jake!" she yelled, voice echoing through the weighty black. Silence answered, stretching it taut. A chill danced along her spine, and suddenly, whispers filled the air, soft as a breeze yet sharp as a knife. Join us," the voices coiled like snakes, breathy and insidious, dripping with malice and madness. She couldn't let them steal her resolve. Focusing deeply, she willed her eyes to adjust. The darkness was alive, pulsating and writhing, shadows bending and moving unnaturally. Then, she saw them, flickering shapes, grotesque in their caricature of humanity. They were twisted and gaunt, with eyes that glowed like dying embers. "Let go," one of the figures urged, its lips curling into a predatory grin. "Join the others, become one with the darkness." Their invitation felt like a noose tightening around her throat, but she fought against it with every fiber of her being. "No. I want tea," she forced out, defiance igniting within her. The laughter snarled back, echoing through the abyss. The ground shifted abruptly, and Sarah felt herself moving, pulled by unseen hands. The laughter grew more maniacal. The shadows pressed in so tightly, she could barely breathe. Panic clawed at her, then came Jake's voice, clearer now, a beacon of hope in the encroaching dark. "Mom! Help me, please!" She lunged forward, chasing the sound, her feet scrambling over ground that felt like a living creature throbbing, squelching under her weight. "I'm coming!" The words erupted out, fueled by adrenaline and love, cutting through the howling chorus filling her ears. The laughter intensified, but she forced her way through, stepping on the remnants of those consumed before her. Debris of their lives littered the ground, corrupted pieces that sank into the blood-soaked earth, each step heavier than the last. "Turn back!" hissed a voice that sliced through her. "You don't belong here. You'll only get lost just like the rest." A flutter of despair flickered within, attempting to weave itself into her resolve. "No!" she breathed, fighting back against the tide of hopelessness. She pushed onward. Then, without warning, the terrain shifted again. She stumbled into a cavernous space, vast and echoing. An eerie glow filled the air, illuminating horrific forms twisted beyond recognition. Blood-slicked mouths smiled with a hunger she could feel gnawing at her sanity. "Join us," they rasped, stretching hands out from their shadowy forms towards her, grasping, clutching, desperate. But before they could pull her in, she caught sight of something. In the center of that desolate scene, a small figure was huddled stark against the grotesque chaos. "Jake! Mom!" The cry slipped from him, a shattering scream that echoed in her heart. She rushed toward him, arms outstretched, but the shadows converged, trying to hold her back. "Let him go!" Sarah screamed, her desperation transforming into raw fury. They hesitated, just for a moment, surprise flickering across their twisted faces. It was enough. With a surge of strength, she broke through the barrier of looming shadows, grasping Jake's trembling form. The connection was electric, igniting a world of warmth within the chill. "Let us go. Now!" she barked, dragging him back. But the shadows stirred in protest. Determined, she bolted, heart racing. With every step, the shadows swirled angrily around her, howling, trying to reclaim their prey. As they reached the edge of the void, it trembled beneath their feet, the darkness churning ominously. What lay ahead was light hope, but it flickered uncertainly, the shadows clawing at their heels, desperate to reclaim what was theirs. Would they make it through? Would love conquer the dark? The question lanced her heart, but she pushed ahead, breath steady as they burst toward the light, praying it would not lead them to a dead end or to something worse. The light engulfed them, warm and blinding, but beneath its facade, Sarah felt an icy clutch at her gut. Could it be a trick? The shadows howled, a final, despairing wail, backing off as they rushed forward, but their insidious whispers lingered in the air, wrapping around her thoughts. When the brightness faded, they found themselves standing in a clearing, surrounded by looming trees whose trunks twisted unnaturally, gnarled branches curling like skeletal fingers. The air was thick with a damp musk, and a musty scent of decay wafted through the leaves. "Mom!" Jake's trembling voice pulled her from her worries. He clutched her hand so tightly it felt like he might crush her bones. "Are we safe?" She whispered, scanning the eerie stillness. "Let us just keep moving." They began to walk, but with every step, discomfort gnawed at Sarah. It felt wrong. Shadows, less than before, brushed at the corners of her vision, flickering at the edges of the clearing. The sensation of being watched clung to her, sending shivers dancing up her arms. Then a sound shattered the silence, rustling from the underbrush, followed by a cling of metal against wood. Sarah froze, heart pounding. Ahead, through the tangled foliage, a figure emerged. It was cloaked in tattered rags, skin marred by dirt and fear, its eyes wild and unblinking, glowing with an unnatural luminescence. "Stay behind me, Jake!" she shouted, steering him behind her. The figure stepped closer, mouth twisting into a smile that was far too wide, teeth jagged and yellowed. "You shouldn't have come here, little ones. The forest doesn't let go of those who trespass," it rasped, each word dripping with an otherworldly cadence. "Who are you?" Sarah shouted, courage rising against the tide of fear. "What do you want?" "I want what's yours," the figure hissed, advancing. "Your light, your hope, your boy." Before Sarah could react, several more figures emerged from the shadows of the trees, others just as twisted and sickly. They moved in unison, teeth bared, hungry, eyes shining with manic excitement. Panic speared through her. "Run, Jake!" she yelled, grabbing his hand, heart racing. They fled, the cacophony of laughter and snarls erupting behind them, echoing ominously in the hollow woods. Branches clawed at them as they dashed through the underbrush, barely dodging descending limbs like monstrous hands. But Sarah refused to look back. Not now. Not with Jake by her side. Each frantic step felt like a countdown to catastrophe. Suddenly, the ground tilted, and they tumbled down a muddy slope, rolling over each other until they landed in a hollow at the base of an ancient, twisted tree. Sarah gasped for breath, chest heaving, as the laughter faded into the distance. "Are they gone?" Jake whimpered, wide-eyed and pale. I don't know, she said through gritted teeth. Sweat dripped down her forehead, mixing with the dirt on her skin. She pressed her ear to the ground. Silence enveloped them, thick and oppressive. The shadows danced around, casting fleeting glimpses of unseen creatures lurking just beyond their vision. The ground felt alive beneath her, shifting subtly, sending prickles up her spine. We have to get out of here, she whispered, voice trembling, and in the stillness, a low growl resonated through the hollow. It was deep and menacing, echoing towards them with unfiltered dread, rising like a tide. Sarah Jake's voice was barely audible, laden with terror, and that S when she understood. This place was not just haunted, it had a pulse, a hunger, feeding off their fear. As they crouched in the darkness, adrenaline coursing through them, the shadows began to converge once more, whispering eagerly of betrayal and consumption. Would they escape alive? Or would the darkness devour not just their light, but their very souls? The forest seemed to sigh, as if breathing them in, and Sarah could feel the unfathomable eyes watching, waiting eagerly. A branch snapped, echoing in the hollow a reminder that the hunt was far from over. The ground shifted beneath them, trembling like a living creature, reminding Sarah of the ever-present menace that lurked within the darkness. The low growl became louder, vibrating through her bones. Something was close. She could feel it, a malignant energy creeping towards them like fog rolling in from the sea. What do we do? Jake's voice cracked, pulling at her instincts to protect him. His small frame pressed against her, as if he could become part of her skin and disappear into safety. Just stay quiet, she whispered, her own heart thundering in her chest. Don't move. As the growl settled into a more primal snarl, the shadows gathering at the boundaries of their hollow thickened. They seemed to pulse, a dark tide rising, grasping for the light. Sarah strained to see, to pierce the veil of night enveloping them. In a swift motion, the shadows flickered, revealing glimpses of distorted faces, mouths stained crimson, eyes shining with fury and hunger. Run! She yelled again, but the word felt hollow against the overwhelming dread surrounding them, drowning out the way forward. Then a flash, a pale hand shot out of the shadows, skeletal fingers reaching for Jake. Sarah grabbed him, yanking him away just as the hand brushed against the earth where they had just been. The creature's howl pierced the night, furious and filled with rage at their escape. Go, now! She cried. They scrambled to their feet, tangling in each other as they burst from the hollow, adrenaline propelling them into the twisted embrace of the forest once again. Branches whipped at them, slashing at their faces, but they pressed on, heart racing, lungs burning. Shadows loomed, darting in and out of their periphery, lingering just out of sight. The laughter rose again, a hive of malicious encouragement echoing from nearby. Sarah turned to Jake, whose eyes glistened with terror. Follow me. Don't stop. The urgency in her voice shook them both. They veered left, desperate to find a path, an escape, but every direction seemed to pull them deeper into the heart of the nightmare. The trees loomed closer together, their gnarled branches knitting a web overhead, blocking any stray beams of moonlight, cloaking the woods in darkness. Suddenly, ahead of them, the ground gave way, revealing a shallow pit. A foul odor wafted up from the depths, making Sarah's stomach churn. We can't go that way. But behind them, the growls intensified, echoing closer, impatient. Mom! Jake cried, pointing to the left. That way. With no time to waste, they lunged toward the direction Jake indicated. Just as they rounded a tree, a figure sprang from the shadows to block their path, another gaunt creature, its face lined with the terror of isolation, its body twisted by the wood's dark hunger. Leave him! Sarah roared, tackling the figure with all her strength. They tumbled to the forest floor, but the creature was too agile, transforming its rage into movement as it rolled aside. Jake was screaming now, shrill and panicked. Sarah turned, eyes narrowing at the darkening sky above. The shadows clawed at her mind, dragging thoughts of failure and despair into the recesses of her heart. She had been led here, deeper into this cursed reality, and now there was a price to pay. Don't lose hope, She whispered to herself as much as to Jake, but the forest seemed to laugh at her words, mocking her facade of strength. Suddenly, a brief glimmer of light breaking through the suffocating darkness ahead. A raised palm seemed to beckon them, faint but promising. Was it safe? "Jake, are you ready?" she asked, gripping his arm tightly. "We have to go, Mom," he urged, his voice quivering yet electrified with resolve. But as they surged toward the light, the air thickened around them, and the shadows let out a bone-chilling chorus. In the instant before reaching the light, Sarah froze. Curiosity mixed with fear clawed at her throat. What awaited them? Deliverance or an even darker fate? The path ahead shimmered enticingly, but with each step forward, the sinister shadows began to whisper once more, rising in terror around them, foretelling a danger far worse than they had faced before. And then, without warning, the ground beneath them began to rumble, an ominous reminder what awaited them on the other side. Was it light or the insatiable darkness? The light flickered, uncertain, but Sarah felt a force pulling her forward, into its warmth. "We have to trust it, Jake," she urged, trying to drown out the whispers clawing at her mind. With every ounce of courage, she stepped forward, the shadows swirling, attempting to entangle her every move. As they crossed the threshold of light, the forest screamed in protest, branches cracking as if the very trees resented their escape. The warmth enveloped them, and for a heartbeat, she thought they were free. But then, as they stumbled forward, the world shifted. The ground was no longer solid beneath them, instead, it dropped away, and they were falling, plummeting through the unexpected brightness until they landed with a thud in a small, grassy clearing. Dazed, Sarah shook her head, pulling herself to a sitting position. Jake was beside her, wide-eyed but intact. "Mom, where are we?" The clearing was different, a vibrant oasis amidst the darkness of Black Hollow. Colors bloomed around them, wildflowers danced in the breeze, their petals vivid against the green, and the smell of fresh earth filled her lungs, almost overwhelming in its purity. "I don't know, buddy," she breathed, clutching his hand tightly. "But we made it past those shadows." But the respite was short-lived. As Sarah looked around, she felt a familiar chill creep up her spine. The happiness of the scene faded as shadows started to creep in from the edges of the trees. They lurched forward, reaching for her and Jake, their whispered urges echoing, "Join us, stay close," she shouted, spinning on her heel. They couldn't linger, they had to move before the darkness reclaimed them. They raced across the clearing, each step heavier with the strain nagging at their hearts. The trees positioned themselves like sentinels, branches twisting, eyes watching, waiting for a chance. "Mommy!" Jake's terrified cry echoed in the air as, further ahead, he spotted a gateway, a flickering doorway hidden between the gnarled roots of a massive tree. "Over there." His point trembled with both fear and hope. "Okay. Hold on tight," she urged, her resolve sharpened by panic. They bolted toward the entrance, the shadows snarling close behind, clawing at their backs. Just as they reached the tree, the once hiding darkness burst forth, coiling like smoke around them. Jake screamed as a dark figure lunged, claws gleaming under the fading light. Sarah slammed the door shut and pressed her back against it, heart racing, praying it would hold. It was a moment suspended in time, suffocating and heavy, filled with breathless anticipation. The agony of silence stretched between them, as if the forest was expecting their doom. Then, the door magically creaked open, aglow with a silvery light beyond. With no time to rethink, Sarah gripped Jake's hand, and they slipped through just as the shadows clawed hungrily. They crossed the threshold, their bodies tumbling into what appeared to be an old abandoned shed, dust motes dancing in the air, trapped like them in a past forgotten. "Is it over?" Jake whispered, fear still painted on his pale face. The frantic pace of his breathing matched Sarah's as she closed her eyes for a moment, fighting the exhaustion threatening to overtake her. Each ragged breath pulled her deeper into a reckoning. "I don't know, Jake," she murmured, glancing at the door. The muffled growls within the shed echoed, like a beast clawing at the sanctuary they just found. "But we're safe for now. Let us just wait a little." But no sooner had the last word left her lips than the shadows surged, smashing against the shed with a thunderous roar. Jake whimpered, as Sarah gripped his shoulders. "We need to find a way out. We can't stay here." She scanned the small room, cluttered with old tools and broken furniture. Her hand brushed against something, a rusted axe. As fear turned fierce, Sarah snatched it up. "We'll fight," she said, a newfound strength in her voice. "Together." The door rattled, the shadows pushing against it, desperate to reclaim their prey. "I won't let them take you." "Not again," she growled. Adrenaline racing through her veins. With Jake at her side, the shadows dwindled as she swung the axe towards the door. She hit hard, again and again, determination boiling over as splinters flew. The darkness raged outside, howling in a furious symphony. Finally, with a last, fierce swing, she cleaved through. The door crumbled, and light poured in, burning away the darkness. "Now!" she shouted, taking Jake's hand, pulling him towards the brightness that flowed like a river. They bolted into the open, bursting forth into the warmth of sunlight embracing them. The tall trees that had once served as prisons now appeared as guardians, welcoming them back. "Look, Mom!" Jake gasped, pointing to the horizon where a vibrant sky greeted them. They stood on a ridge overlooking the valley of Black Hollow. Below, hints of the town lingered, but nothing felt oppressive. They had escaped. Sarah drew Jake close, their hearts beating wildly together. "We did it," she whispered, glancing back once at the shadows retreating. "We survived." "Yeah, we did." Jake grinned, innocence blossoming on his face as they shared the moment. They breathed in the clear air, feeling the weight of fear lift. As the sun shone brightly, illuminating the path ahead, they knew they were free, but forever changed. The shadows behind them would always linger, a reminder of the terror they had faced, but alongside it, in this moment, was the strength of their fellowship, a love that had brought them home. "Let us go," she said softly. "No more looking back. We're moving forward, together." And as mother and son walked hand in hand into the open world, hope flickered like the light of a candle, unwavering and bright. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Fill the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to support the channel.